My name is Laura Hayes. I'm one of the advocates for equity and justice for the CORE program at Pasadena City College. And before we begin, we wanted to honor the land that we're on. So I'm going to read our acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to humbly acknowledge the land we are on, which is stolen land, and to recognize and acknowledge the indigenous people of the land that our institution sits on, the Tongva. While a land acknowledgement is not enough, it is an important social justice and decolonial practice that promotes indigenous visibility and reminds us that we are on settled indigenous land. Let this remind us to contemplate how we can support decolonial and indigenous movements for sovereignty and self-determination, as well as continue to raise up the voices of all marginalized people. With that, I wanted to go ahead and explain a little of how this will work. So we have a PowerPoint. Danny and Michael are going to be sharing. And during that time, if you have any questions that pop up, feel free to write them down either on your own or in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A. Also, we're just so grateful to share space with you. Our program is new. We've been at Pasadena City College for less than a year. We're called Community Overcoming Recidivism Through Education, and we're a program for formerly incarcerated and system impacted students. So we're really grateful to be here and to see people from all over our state. With that, I'm going to share my screen. I'll let you know that we are recording this presentation, but it will not be shared until we're able to edit. So any comments that are made, any questions, any personal stories that are not shared by our staff or by Danny and Michael will be edited out so that your privacy is still there when we do end up sharing the workshop. So this is the second in our speaker series. Our workshop today is Pelican Bay to UC Berkeley, a community effort. We have Danny Murillo and Michael Saavedra. I'm sure that you have seen their bios on our flyers, but I'm gonna read them and probably add my 2 cents. So Danny Murillo graduated from Cerritos College and the University of California, Berkeley. He's the co-founder of the Underground Scholars Initiative and a media representative for the Prison Hunger Strike Solidarity Coalition. Danny is the program analyst at the Campaign for College Opportunity and is currently applying for a master's in education at CSU Long Beach and Los Angeles. Michael Saavedra was incarcerated for 19 years. 15 years were in solitary confinement. He participated in the 2011 California prison hunger strikes. In solitary, Michael taught himself law and successfully sued CDCR several times. Michael was recently accepted to UC Berkeley and the recipient of the 2020 Justice Catalyst Fellowship. So I've had the honor of sharing space with these 2 amazing, incredible humans on multiple occasions. Danny really taught me what it is to be a leader in this movement and kind of solidified that system impacted voices are important. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm not gonna cry. Michael, I met for the first time last year, or yeah, less than a year ago. But I've seen him move in ways that are super powerful, and he is an incredible voice. So I'm just really grateful to be here with these 2. And with that, I am going to start you off with a video. So I think I need to reshare my screen because I didn't share the volume. So you can hear this video.
First time I got arrested and put into handcuffs, I was 8 years old. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was first generation Mexican-American. My parents had just came from Mexico. Me and two other kids, we were caught with spray cans and they accused us of stealing them from Home Depot. The people at Home Depot said, no, nobody stole these cans. They still took us to the station. And I remember him saying that, like, we're gonna take you to the station because we're gonna prepare you for your future. That really left a mark on me. When I was 13 years old, I joined a street gang. I grew up in a community where gang violence existed. By the age of 13, it was something that was already normalized. I started selling weed. From that, I went to crack. On my 18th birthday, I was sent to prison with a sentence of 15 years and 2 felonies. I ended up getting transferred to Pelican Bay SHU. You're in your cell 22 and a half hours a day. You can talk to people through the vent, you can talk to people through the toilet, but seeing somebody, that's very rare. You're allowed to come out for an hour and a half. You come out by yourself to a small concrete enclosure with the walls about 18 feet high. The hardest thing was understanding that that place was built to break you, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I started talking to this individual who's been incarcerated since 1977. We got to share a lot of our ideas. You know, he asked me what is it that I like to read, what kind of books I like to read, and I told him I prefer history books and books with facts. And he told me that I should give fiction a try. And to me, that had a very big impact. The first book I read was Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist. And then after that, I think I might have read The Grapes of Wrath, and then Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and then Candide, which was really my favorite one. I wanted to take advantage of what was available there in the prison. And at that point, there was a GED program. And then after I received my GED, they were offering correspondence courses through a community college. And I came home with about 48 credits. Once I started school, like, I literally told myself, like, I'm gonna dedicate myself to my education, and that's it. I was accepted to UC Berkeley, and then the first day of school is the day that I met Steven.
I was a 38-year-old junior, mostly invisible to my peers, you know? Because once you hit like 32, you're pretty much invisible to the cool kids, you know what I mean?
I told him something about feeling uncomfortable around all these young people. And he's like, yeah, me too, man. And I told him something about I've been away from school for a long time. And he's like, yeah, me too. And I told him I was in Pelican Bay SHU. And he literally responded, yeah, me too.
When I got here, I was socially isolated. I didn't know anything about what this being at UC Berkeley was about. And so I was like looking for a place to find a community because I knew the importance of community. It's what makes us humans.
One of the results of incarceration for people that are coming home is having to live with the stigma of being the boogeyman, being the bad person, being the animal, right? It leaves a mark on you. I mean, incarceration is a traumatic experience. You should still seek some type of help to be able to cope with what you went through.
So I want to start this meeting off with a check-in question. And the question is going to be, how's your semester going and what are you looking forward to?
Hi, everybody. My name is Lanika, and this is my first semester here at Cal.
We work to find out those barriers that are social and cultural and ameliorate them or eliminate them altogether.
I think that I was resilient enough to overcome the trauma that solitary confinement imposes on the individual and use it to my advantage. I want to be a resource for people and be able to put people in positions to be able to excel after incarceration. Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? We're good? Yeah? Can you, okay, cool. Hi, so hello everybody. Thank you for being here today. And I just kind of wanted to start off this conversation, right, about, we're going to be talking about a few different things, right? And one of the things that we want to unpack first is what is it that folks do inside to, survive the conditions of solitary confinement, right? Or what we would call the torture chambers. And it's just, for different people, they find different ways to cope with the impact of isolation while in isolation, right? And so some of the things that that we, I would engage in, right, to help me cope with, and cope with, with being in solitary confinement was playing chess, right? I was a shooter, man. I used to love playing chess, and not only did I play chess, but I also made chess pieces, right? And a chess board for people. So anytime a new person would come into the pod that I was in, like after introducing myself, the first question would be like, hey, do you play chess? I'll make some chess pieces, and then also another thing that I would also do, right? I would cook for people, right? What you see right there on the screen on the lower left-hand corner is a home, is a prison-made tamal, right? That's what we would make tamales in prison out of, potato chips, refried dried beans and dried rice and just different things that you could buy in the commissary, which wasn't a lot of things, right? But, one thing that we learned in solitary is like, you make ends with what you have, right? Like whatever you have at your disposal, you use it, and so sometimes all you have is your wits, and that's what kind of keeps us going, right? And of course, the exercising, right? That was something that, at least for me and the people that I hung around with, that was something that was mandatory, right? Like we all wake up at 6 a.m. and, do like our 1 hour Jane Fonda routine and, or whatever it is that we do, and so, and it was a way to build community, build solidarity, right? And to remind ourselves, right, that we're here, we're here together, right? And how do we pass this time in a way where it's going to be something that's going to impact us in a positive way, right? And I was blessed to be in pods. What we call pods are there's 8 cells on the bottom, 8 cells on top, and there's 6 of those in each building, right? And there's a total of 22 buildings in solitary confinement at Pelican Bay. And in those pods, right, you could be in that pod for up to 6, 7, 8 years with the same people, right? And if you don't get along with them or talk to them, it could be a horrible experience. But I was blessed to be around people who saw the importance of camaraderie and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. For myself, I was very young, and I was just recently arrested and convicted when I went to Pelican Bay. So it's like coming fresh off the streets into not just prison or general population, where you see what you might see on TV is, folks walking around, playing basketball, getting contact visits. I was sent immediately to Pelican Bay SHU, where it's very oppressive and you don't have very much communication with other people. And I guess you could say my experience was a little bit different in that I was really pissed off. I was pissed off at the fact that, I didn't take a plea bargain for the first time in my life, which I normally always took plea bargains because they were scary with life sentences, etc. And this time I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go all the way because I felt like what they were claiming that I did, I didn't do. And so I fought my case and I lost. And when I lost, I was just, really upset. And so when they sent me to solitary in the beginning, I was pretty like a little depressed because I missed, the streets, I missed family, I missed friends, and but also pissed, right? So folks was in there was like really, you talk about community, like it was a trip just to see Black, brown, white people all greet you at your door and like, give you soap, toothpaste, all the little essentials that you need, books. And we're like, yeah, I was talking to one of them, an elder who was really, really smart, and he had been in solitary for like 20 years. And I was talking to him about my case. He's like, you should appeal that, you know, sign up for the law library. And it's also a great way to get out of the cell, because, you know, you're in the cell all day. And so you'll be able to communicate with other people from different pods or different units. So I would go to the law library and just start reading books, granted that when I was initially convicted, I didn't even finish junior high. I was expelled out of junior high and sent to juvenile hall. So it was really difficult for me to understand case law, which is a lot of it is in Latin, and they use really big words. So one of the first things I did was I asked, you know, the community on the tier for a dictionary. And then I just kept like learning big words, learning how to read the law and utilize it, right? You learn how to use the process of it. And that was what really led me to education, but also as a way to pass time in there. Let me step back real quick too, but so when I was really pissed off, I used to like really lash out at the guards. I was mad at everybody. I was rebellious. I used to try to fight with them, and I would always end up like hogtied, pepper sprayed, and all my property took. So one of the things I did take away that my elders on the tier would tell me is like, you know, the pen is mightier than the sword, right? So you should appeal this stuff, and you know, you can sue these people for things, right? So once I started to learn to grasp that, and one of my first lawsuits, I won like $10,000 because they didn't take me to the law library, but which in effect caused me to miss my court date, what I was supposed to file. So they actually caused me to lose my case. But it really empowered me to know that I could do something and make a change for myself, right? And at the same time too, you know, because just reading books all day is quite boring. I learned also how to draw. So I started drawing. That's one of my drawings on the screen. And then here's another one. But see, that was part of the problem too, because when you're around your people, your community, and you start to begin, like myself, with educating myself, the first thing I wanted to learn was history, because I didn't really know a lot of, you know, our history, the indigenous history. And so I started studying, you know, the history of the Aztecs, the Mayans, and that's what I used to draw. And ironically, our own culture inside is used against us. I could go on forever talking about the validation process, what they utilize to put folks in solitary indefinitely, which some of these things are just basically embracing your culture. Like if you are from up north and you have the huelca, the bird that Cesar Chavez used for their symbol, that is considered a gang symbol and can send you to solitary. This drawing that's on the screen, the very small Ashayaka symbol, eternal warrior symbol that's on Xochitl, the flower princess, they say is also a symbol that represents a prison gang. So these type of things will be continually used against us to keep us in there perpetually. And if you had a sentence like Danny, 15 years, or myself, you even had a life sentence, you could literally be in solitary forever. But the drawing really helped me to ease my mind. Like, you know, it was sort of therapeutic. People would love, you know, or often, you know, praise me for that my work, and I would be like, wow, you know, I taught myself this just like I taught myself the law. It was kind of empowering as well to know that we have talents too. We're not just what they want to claim us to be, the worst of the worst garbage that we have to be locked in isolation forever under the prison because we're so bad, right? We're such really terrible people. So I began to become creative with that, and also with my litigation, which eventually I won my first lawsuit against CDCR, and then my second for keeping me in solitary confinement for such a long time without due process. And
so you all have talked about
sorry,
how you survived well inside, and especially in the SHU, and you touched on the educational opportunities. What motivated you to enroll in college while you were incarcerated?
You're asking me or Danny?
No, you go ahead, take that.
for me, it was basically like I knew that they done me wrong, and then also like just the hatred I had just from growing up, being oppressed, and particularly by the whole white supremacist, mass incarceration, new Jim Crow scheme that we all go through, right? But not realizing what it was until I started reading these history books and seeing how they annihilated and how they treated the Aztecs and the people of this nation, and just literally like raped, pillaged, and just conquered and took everything from us, and even try to take our culture, right? They even try to, they changed their language. They forced them to use Spanish. They changed their religion. And so these things started making me realize like, wow, this whole system is very racist. And even the judge, I used to get pissed off because the judge would like just be really, really prejudicial to my case. And so I began to, have this deep-seated hatred for white supremacy, right? And especially when the guards used to mess with me or whatever. And so I think that once I found out that we can utilize the law, empower ourselves with the very same law, use it against them, that we can actually create change or better positions for ourselves. But it was so difficult to read and understand, and it was it's a very, very wide academia subject, right? You can go into many different fields of the law. So that's what really motivated me to start learning more bigger words, be articulate, have a vast vocabulary, learn how to write good. So that's why I started initially once after the hunger strikes, when they did start the pilot program for college correspondence courses inside, I started taking those like grammar classes, English 1, all the basics to help me with my litigation.
So, when I arrived to solitary confinement in 2003, I was halfway through my prison sentence, and I got, as Michael described, I was sent to Pelican Bay because I was validated as an associate to a prison gang, and the evidence that they used against me were drawings, Mayan and Aztec drawings that my mom would send me in a calendar, right? This is a calendar that the prison would let in, and then once I have it in my possession, they look at these drawings and they say, oh, you know what? That symbol is a prison gang symbol. That symbol is a prison gang symbol. That symbol is a prison gang symbol. So now you're an associate to a prison gang. And so, but the interesting thing that I wanted to go to Pelican Bay, right? I wanted to go to Pelican Bay since I was a kid, right? Since I first heard, about Pelican Bay and the fact that in my community, there was already people in Pelican Bay, right? People that we grew up looking up to, even though we didn't know them. And I believe one of them is on here right now, my homeboy, Jack Morris, right? He was someone that had been in Pelican Bay, had been incarcerated since 1978, right? And in solitary confinement for almost 30-something plus years, right? And we grew up knowing his name, and the names of a bunch of other people in our community. So I was like, yo, I'm going to Pelican Bay when I get to prison. It's not even if I go to prison, but like when I get to prison, I'm going to Pelican Bay. And when I finally make it there, I'm like, yo, what the fuck, yo, like, why, there's not, it's just, you're in isolation, right? And that's something that we were striving for, right, as kids, right? And so, but halfway through my sentence, as I get to Pelican Bay, I'm already going through this transformation, right? Like this mental transformation of, one, I don't want to come back to prison. I know I'm going home, I'm in solitary confinement, I won't get in trouble. I'm not going to be able to hurt anybody other than myself, and I'm not going to do that. So let me focus on doing something better for myself while I'm here, right? Because I already knew what that place was for, right? That place was designed to break you. And so what I didn't want to do, I didn't want that to happen to me, right? I didn't want to be in a position where I want to get out of solitary confinement, and the only way to get out of solitary confinement and out of that torturous condition is by putting someone else in there. And I wasn't going to do that. And so for me, I dedicated my time there to finding things that finding interesting things that I like, and reading was one of those things, right? And I know that in the video they mentioned a bunch of books, right? But unfortunately, because of the power of editing, they didn't really include a lot of the stuff that really made an impact in my life, right? And that was the non-Eurocentric literature, right? In the video, they mentioned, Dostoevsky, and they mentioned Voltaire and Charles Dickens, but there books by Eduardo Galeano, Subcomandante Marcos, you know, Luis Rodriguez, Always Running, you know, Reign of Gold, right? You know, these were also books that spoke to me in a way that the other literature didn't, right? And it allowed me to find a sense of purpose, right? And so once I started school, you know, and I say those things because education doesn't just come through just formal education, right? I learned through so many different mediums, right? Like reading, you know, fiction, right? Watching TV. TV was a very big educational tool for me, right? In particular, PBS, right? We would watch Nova, Independent Lens, Frontline, Democracy Now, Bill Moyer's Journal, even Globetrotter, which is something that inspired me to want to travel the world, right? And so these were different ways of learning. And then on top of that was also the education, right? The formal education, the college program, right? Which, although it was correspondence, and you know, I'm a big advocate for face-to-face programming when it's done correctly. You know, the correspondence program, right? As much as I don't advocate for it, right? It still served the value, right? Because we were able to do something with it while in solitary. I mean, and like I said before, right? We take whatever we can get, we're gonna make something out of it, right? And we did make something out of it, right? You know, I built a community through education, right? Built a community with people that at one point in my life, in prison, I would consider my enemies, right? And I'm talking about whether white folks, black folks, Chicanos from Northern California. We built connections through education, right? And for me, that was powerful. And it showed me that education is transformative, right? And so, you know, that definitely impacted me and gave me a sense of purpose and something to look forward to when I came home, right? I was trying to finish my AA in there, but when I didn't, and I was kind of pissed off, but then once I got home, I was like, you know what? It's a good thing that I didn't finish, because if I would have finished, I probably wouldn't have even considered education, because all I was thinking was like, oh, I just want my AA. And when I started community college, that's all I was thinking about. I just want my AA, and then, you know, things, you know, something else just happened, right? But I wanted, you know, anyways, I'm gonna go back to the isolation thing, right? Is that, you know, we educate ourselves through different mediums, right? It wasn't just the college courses, but the college courses, I believe, played a big role in building community between, or a stronger community between everybody that was in there, right? Whether, you know, black, white, brown folks, right? Because we all learned off each other, you know? We all borrowed each other's books, we all shared each other's notes, and we all had our own little study groups in there, right? And it wasn't just an isolated thing where, like, you know what, I'm gonna study with my homies and I'm not gonna study with you because you're black. Like, nah, man, we all here together. Let's work together.
Thank you, Danny, for sharing, and Michael. I'm going to pivot the conversation, but before that, I've seen people raising their hands, and I just wanted to reiterate, if there's questions or comments, we'll have a time for Q&A after the presentation, not too much longer, but you can type them in the chat or you can write them down and save them for later. So moving from education, I know you both have different experiences with the prison hunger strikes. So can you talk about that?
You want to talk about what the prison hunger strike was, Michael?
Yeah, for sure. So from my experience and perspective, you know, folks had been in solitary for decades, some, as Danny has mentioned, like Jack, you know, 30, 40 years, right? Which is crazy. And just the effects of it. I mean, me and Danny, we're strong enough, and others, Jack and many others, are strong enough we're strong enough to survive it. But there's so many other folks that couldn't, right? Folks, I literally seen grown men just have breakdowns and mental health breakdowns, and I've seen people commit suicide. I've seen, you know, really good friends that were solid individuals just end up, you know, doing what Danny said we could never do, and debrief. And it was just really, it was so punitive and just so oppressive that folks decided, you know, enough is enough. What do we do? How can we change this, right? And so, you know, some folks that have a lot of education and you know, knowledge of our history on how we can do things peacefully, because if we do anything through violence, we all know what happened in Attica, right? We're gonna always be punished and looked at even more violent. So, you know, folks came together, especially right there in the short quarter, and had these discussions, you know, of how can we stop this? And, you know, in a way that it can't be used against us. And so folks looked at like Gandhi and other folks who did peaceful protests through hunger strikes. But before that could even happen, the main thing that needed to happen, because prior to that, I myself, as soon as I was released from the SHU the first time, was involved in many racial riots, racial hostilities between Black and brown. And because we are the majority population, being divided, you know, and not being able to work together, we wouldn't be that strong, right? So folks, you know, came together and agreed to end all those hostilities and end all those animosities that we had for decades against each other, to work together, to come together in solidarity and basically go on this mass hunger strike. And just, you know, one of the key things is like organizing. How do we communicate with other people? How do we let the other, you know, folks know what we're doing? And how do we tactically, you know, have everybody do it at the same time, which is like, that's some amazing shit, you know, excuse my language, but for people to be able to, inside in this isolation where, you know, our oppressors meant us to be, for this very same reason, that they didn't want us to communicate with anybody outside or in any of the general populations, that we were able to get that word to everybody in the entire California state prison system, right? That on this very day, at this very time, we're all just gonna stop all movement, right? Everything's just gonna stop. We're not even gonna accept our food, right? And so it happened, and it just shocked the shit out of the fucking guards. Excuse my language, but I get a little excited because it was a very exciting moment to see in my lifetime and to be a part of it. How when, you know, these guards who are typically, you know, act all macho and hard, especially up in Pelican Bay, because most of them are big old, you know, corn-fed ex-lumberjacks, right? And, you know, think they're all tough when people are in handcuffs and treat you like, you know, like you're less than a man sometimes, right? So just to see the shock on their face and their jaw drop and like, why aren't you accepting your tray? And you just tell them, because I don't want it, like, get the hell out of here, right? It was really empowering to see that. But I think more importantly, like, for folks to want to just kill themselves, like literally die, because if you're going to go on a hunger strike, and we were pushing not like fasting, oh, we're going to eat a little here and there, like completely refusing all food off our tray so that they cannot say, oh, they're cheating, right? That is some serious stuff. And even to the point where some people had died. My neighbor had died, you know, Billy Sells, who was a really cool person and a great, you know, freedom fighter as well. But for people to want to literally starve themselves to death, then you can imagine how horrible those conditions would be, that people want to kill themselves or literally starve themselves to death to get out of it. So I guess I could go a little further as far as the litigation aspect, connecting with folks outside, how Danny, Azadeh, many other people, Dolores, out here, families were also fighting with us, right? And fighting for us out here, organizing and getting folks together and spreading the word and doing, you know, public education on this solitary confinement scheme that they were doing inside for many decades. And so I think that was like really also key, because not only were we able to come together inside prison, but folks on the outside started advocating for us, you know, going to Sacramento, asking the policymakers to have hearings about this. And so I think that was, you know, it just gave us all the media attention that we needed. And then in came the lawyers, but folks like myself, Todd Ashner, many others were already litigating their own cases, right? And so when we reached out to like civil rights organizations, human rights organizations as well, and they said, yes, we want to take on your case as a class action. It was like, now, not only do we have the power of the people, but now we have the power of lawyers and the court system, which for me personally, I seen as a bit of power, right? But the three coming together was super powerful. And yeah, I'm very proud in the sense that I was a part of it because of the fact that I learned so much from it. I seen the power of the people. I seen the power of fighting back and resisting, and of solidarity, you know, coming together with Black and brown. That was huge. And I hope that it continues. And I know this is a little bit off this topic, but what's going on today in LA has to stop, and we have to stop feeding into that. You know, Black and brown together, we're very strong. That's what the white man, white supremacist, LAPD wants to see us doing, is going at each other again so that they can continue to lock us up. But I'll let Danny go ahead and talk about his experience with the prison hunger strikes.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So I got involved with the hunger strike on the third round, which was in July of 2013. Prior to that, the first two hunger strikes, which I believe were in 2011 and maybe 2012, I didn't get involved in those hunger strikes on the outside as an organizer because I was still on parole. And I was on what they call high risk parole because of my prison gang affiliation, right? Or supposedly prison gang affiliation that CDCR, you know, said that I was involved with. But at that time, you know, my first 2 years out of prison, you know, the first two hunger strikes happened. I'm in community college. I'm following everything that's happening on Facebook, and I'm telling myself, like, you know, I may not be involved in the movement directly, but I was writing to about like 8 or 9 people that were in solitary, right? And that experience, right, reading the letters from folks, right, telling me like, yo, Danny, man, I just lost 30 pounds, bro. Like, you know, I feel like I'm about to die, you know, really left an impact on me, right? And motivated me to want to do something. And I didn't know what though. And then when I get to Berkeley, you know, I'm walking through the ethnic studies department and I see a flyer on a wall and it says, the end to this is a call to end all hostilities in California prisons, California jails, juvenile halls. And it was signed by people that I knew, right? And it was not just, you know, my homies, right? But, you know, there was homies from up north, you know, homies from down south, you know, Black folks, white folks. And to me, that just empowered me so much, right? To see folks coming together and making that call to end the racial and geographic hostility that exists in California prisons, and to work together to bring an end to long-term solitary confinement. And then, so I met, you know, I was blessed to meet some amazing people, right, at UC Berkeley when I first got there with Professor Pat Hilden, Dr. Casares, Francisco Casares, Dr. Victoria Robinson, along with Azadeh Zorabi, who's now the director of Berkeley Underground Scholars. And a lot of these folks really brought me into this movement, right? And that's what gave me a platform, right? You know, being involved in the hunger strike and lending my voice, right, was so empowering, right? That you know, that's what gave me my platform, along with the work that we were doing on campus to build underground scholars. They both kind of coincided at the same time, you know, and you know, for me, the hunger strike is something that is, you know, it's historical, yo. Like, we were able to come together as a community, not just folks on the inside, but, you know, folks on the outside. The hunger strike really galvanized families, right? And that's important to understand, because at one point, parents and family members were ashamed to say, my son's in solitary. Not only is my son in prison, but he's also in solitary. You mean? And you don't go to solitary for the crimes that you commit on the outside. You go to solitary for the things that you do on the inside. So then family has to explain to, like, well, my son's in solitary because he's acting a fool in prison still, you know? And so for a lot of families, they don't want to, you know, it's already, you know, the stigma, it's already shameful that you're in prison. Now you're in solitary. And so, but that really galvanized the families, yo. You do not know how many families were out there on the front lines pushing, you know, advocating whether it's in the front of county jail, in front of the governor's office in Sacramento, providing expert testimonies, that was, for me, was historical, right? And I hope that one day someone, Dr. Pickles writes a book about that, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing what and also seeing the spillover effects of what that's doing, right? What the intellectual hostility is doing, not just on the inside, but also on the outside, right? And a lot of my organizing work, I continue to work with, brothers from up north, brothers that, have it, we're either Bloods, Crips, white folks, and because we're all in this together, right? And we see the bigger picture of what we can do as a community instead of being at each other's throats.
So I don't want to take up too much more time before we start answering questions, but if you could just talk a little bit about the work you've been doing since then, and higher education.
Yeah. So we're gonna that'll be the next 2 slides will cover that. So once I came home, my journey in higher education started at Cerritos College, right? And when I first came home, I just wanted to get my AA and just find a job. And again, the community came through. As soon as I came home, one of my, my comadre Valerie, came to my house, asked me, Danny, what are you gonna do? Like, I want to go to school. I just want to finish my AA. And she's telling me like, oh, okay, the homegirl Caroline, she's at Cerritos. I'm gonna have her come over here, and she did. Like the next day, she went to my house, took me to campus, helped me apply with my admissions, helped me fill out my financial aid, walked me around campus, told me what all the resources centers were at, told me about how to do the placement test. And I think one of the most important things that she told me, she goes, Danny, after you do the placement test, you're gonna go and talk to an academic counselor. But don't feel that you always have to talk to that same person. What I wanted to encourage you is to look for that one counselor that you can identify with, right? Even if it takes 10 different counselors that you have to go visit, do it until you find that one counselor that's going to support you in what you want to do. And it wasn't long to find that one person, right? That one person introduced me to everybody else, right? And so I'm in community college for 2 years, I'm using that place as a space to really rebuild my life, right? It's the first place where I actually have an actual job, where I'm actually beginning to create my own, an actual resume, because I've never worked in my life, right? And everything that I learned at Cerritos College, I took it with me to Berkeley, right? And as soon as I got to Berkeley, I went to all the resource centers, all the scholarship centers, and really looking for all the resources that were gonna help me make the best out of my experience at UC Berkeley, right? And luckily enough, I was, I'm in Berkeley, right? Where, critical resistance started there, right? And so I met a lot of great folks that took an interest in me, right? And invested in me and allowed me to really use education, not just as a tool for me to thrive, but also as a tool for me to become a resource for other people, right? And so, and also, most importantly, right, it has allowed me to use, higher education has allowed me to change the narrative about what it is to be a formerly incarcerated person, right? And now we have formerly incarcerated people producing the knowledge about who we are through the perspective of people who live that experience, right? And not from folks who have this bird's eye view and never even been, whether in a prison or even in the barrios, right? Or in the hoods, right? And I think for us, that was very important, right? So you, Michael?
So for me, my education experience actually started in the Bay with, learning how to comprehend law, learning words, learning how to write, taking little GED courses, and then taking but there's this company, I guess you can call it, that is a paralegal correspondence course called Blackstone Law. And so I took that first. I did really well. I got my certificate, got like 4.0 and everything, right? So that kind of led me to want to be into higher education, like getting my AA. So I did take some college correspondence classes from Coastline Community College while I was in Corcoran. Prior to the end of the hunger strike, that was one of the demands that we're asking for, and which they actually gave us. But it was very difficult doing it from a cell without a professor, without any other students to try to, have study groups with, etc. And then eventually, my sentence was modified to 21 years. I got out in 2017. My sister was living in Riverside, so I moved out there with her to kind of get away from things, so to speak. And I started my first semester at Riverside City College, which was a unique experience after being incarcerated for almost 20 years and not being around computers or cell phones and all that, those good things. And just walking in an environment with people who don't look like you, don't talk like you, probably definitely don't come from the same background as you. It was a very unique transition for me. But I started just, doing my classes, and one person that I was connected with from inside, because I heard about Project Rebound, was Marilyn Ralston, who's at Cal State Fullerton. I believe she's still the director of Project Rebound there. She connected me to a conference in LA for formerly incarcerated students, where I went and I met other folks. I believe Danny was there. I met folks who I work with now at YJC. And then they plugged me in. I believe it was, there was a few folks there that were already in school and doing the same thing, that were formerly incarcerated, like I would say Raciana. I believe she was the one that invited me to the Rio Hondo College that was doing a formerly incarcerated student panel. And that's where I actually met Danny. And then I heard about his story and I was like, wow, that's pretty dope. And we kind of connected. And from there, I was like, okay, I don't have to just, limit myself to a Cal State upon graduation. Like I can try, for UC Berkeley, like, damn, he did it, I can do it. And then eventually, I was invited to the UCLA screening of the fight film From Incarceration to Education. And when I seen all those people there who were kind of had stories similar to me, going to UC Berkeley and graduating and doing all these wonderful things, that really motivated me and inspired me that, you know what, I could do that too. And so I also got connected to the Berkeley Underground Scholars Ambassadorship, which gave training on how to also, build community within your own college, community college campus, and connecting with other formerly incarcerated people. So I started the student club at Riverside City College called Transitioning Minds, that it was for formerly incarcerated students, and just like that whole outreaching, telling my story, and watching it grow, and watching how students are actually like really being successful, and now getting accepted to UC Berkeley is like amazing. That was my dream, right? And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I'm already here. It seems like just, yesterday, time flies by so fast. It seems like just yesterday I was sitting in that cell, still mad at the police and still hating everybody. And like, I don't know what's gonna happen out there. I wanna go, but shit, I could die, I could get shot and killed. I could get rearrested, but I made it. I'm not there yet where I want to be, because my ultimate goal is for law school, to become an attorney, a civil rights attorney, and continuing the work that I'm doing, but have more access into spaces where most of us typically aren't allowed, right? And so that's my journey, and I'm very thankful to Danny, to many others, to Underground Scholars, Riverside folks, and for helping to support me, and y'all too, like everybody who's been just very helpful with helping me edit my personal insight question, my applications, folks who helped me at Riverside to learn how to use a computer and apply to college, right? it has been a community all the way through, from in prison to the homies like telling me, hey, you know, you should start learning the law, and you can do things with that, and start, you know, sliding in these philosophy books and all this other stuff that now I understand and really actually helped me with school, especially with the history part and learning about my indigenous roots and how the colonizers just, you know, did us dirty, right? And it just empowers me too, knowing that I'm gonna fight for my people, and I'm gonna continue to fight for the oppressed. And yeah, thank you all.
Thank you so much. And if you just want to share, this is the closing slide, and we're moving forward to build community here. So Danny, Michael, tell us a little bit about this picture.
This is a picture that we took. Actually, I wasn't even in the picture because I was meeting with the folks that organized this conference. But it was at Cal State LA. It was the formerly incarcerated student alumni network conference, right? Where it was part of my my Soros Justice Fellowship, was to have at the culmination of my Soros Fellowship, I was to have organized a student conference for formerly incarcerated folks. And we were able to bring in probably like close to 150, 200 people. You know, I was able to raise up to $50,000 to pay for, you know, everybody's travels and, you know, and flights and whatnot. And it was, for me, it's one of the moments in my life that I am most proud of, right? That, you know, we were able to organize this event and bring people together who at one point probably wouldn't be hugging each other, right? Or looking at each other as brothers and sisters, right? And for me, you know, it shows me the power of community and what we can possibly do, right? And that's pretty much what guides my work, right? Currently, I am the program analyst at the Campaign for College Opportunity. I'm working on their formerly incarcerated student portfolio. I'm trying to understand the challenges and barriers that exist to be able to ameliorate those barriers, right? And create more opportunities for folks, right? And that, even the work that I do there, is tied to the bigger picture, right? Of what I want to see, right? And the bigger picture is not just having access to education, but what comes after that, right? And so right now, you know, I'm also thinking about what are the barriers that folks continue to face even after they get a degree, right? You know, we have those licensing barriers that are still makes it impossible for folks to move forward, right? So that's something that we as a community still need to address, right? Because we can't be advocating for higher education for formerly incarcerated people if they can't work in the field in the career field that they want to pursue an education in, right? So how do we as a community work to address that issue, you know? And I think that's something that we can possibly take on.
Awesome.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say thank you so much, Danny. And Michael, I hear that you're in this picture because Danny's not. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, a little embarrassing, but that's me way on the corner. You're looking at your screen. Yeah, on the right side in the wheelchair. I had just gotten in a motorcycle accident and had my leg shattered. But it was really empowering, and you know, I met so many great folks there that I work with today, and it's a beautiful network. I mean, where folks like help each other out and you know, lift each other's voices, and I just think it's amazing. It really feels like family, especially when you're coming from prison, from that type of family out here, where you feel like people don't understand you or people can't relate to you. These folks, that picture especially, all them people in there can definitely relate to one another and support each other. So I'd just like to say again that it's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate everybody who has helped and participated in this community for higher education.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for sharing your stories, your time, your space. We've had a lot of great questions come up in the chat. So if you all are comfortable reading your own questions, we're gonna go in order, scrolling back up the chat. So we're gonna let that happen. I also want you to know that anything that you share here, this part of the recording is not going to be what is shared. So this is an open space to be able to share openly and with vulnerability if you're comfortable. Before we start with the questions, again, I just wanted to thank Danny and Michael. Your stories are so powerful, and this is the kind of thing we need to hear. Don't need to hear my voice over and over again. I need to hear you. You are medicine, and your words are too. I'm going to be sharing a poll. So you can answer it at your leisure. It's going to pop up on your screen, and just, you know, asking what you got out of this experience and listening to these two powerful men speak. So the poll will go up, and then I will start calling on people to ask their questions while you all are answering our poll.
Question?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome information, guys. Thank you so much. I'm starting, we're starting a formerly incarcerated student program at my community college, Southwestern College in San Diego. And I just wanted to know some information to start the program, like what were some of the things you needed coming out of incarceration regarding your studies? Like, what are some resources you needed, things like that, and any recommendations that you would like to give the program?
One thing that I always talk about is definitely for campus programs and prison programs to start building connections with each other, right? And start building those bridges, because those bridges don't exist, right? And it's important to understand that, like, people that are in Pelican Bay State Prison doing college courses through College of the Redwoods, shout out to College of the Redwoods and the Pelican Bay Scholars. A lot of the folks in that program are not going to get released to Crescent City and the Pelican Bay area. They're going to go to, you know, San Francisco, or, you know, major cities like, you know, Oakland, Central Valley, LA, Orange County, Riverside, you know. And so when folks are coming home from these programs, from these prison programs, they really don't know where to continue their education. So these programs need to build bridges with each other, right? Southwestern College, you know, needs to be in contact with Pelican Bay Scholars and let them know, like, yo, if anybody's from San Diego is getting released, we're here. Give them our contact, give them our names. This is where we're at, you know, so that folks, when they come home, they already know where to go to, right? As opposed to going to a campus, not really understanding, you know, how to navigate that place, right? Because it can also be very intimidating, right? And especially if someone tells you, like, hey, what can I help you with? Oh, I'm trying to sign up for college. Like, well, go to the computer. Well, little do they know this person's been in prison for 30 years. He's never used a computer. And he's not going to say, like, oh, I've been in prison for 30 years, so, you know, like, I can't know how to use a computer. So he might say, you know what, I'm okay. I'll just, you know, do something else. So I think building those bridges are important.
Amazing.
Can we talk about the toolkit that's available on the Corrections to College website?
Yeah, I would encourage you to check out the toolkit on the Corrections to College website, correctionstocollege.ca, I believe, .org. Has some toolkits that I actually contributed to when I was working there. And you can definitely find a lot of useful information there in regards to starting the program, whether from the faculty and administrative perspective, but also from the student perspective. And you can always feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I jump in really quick? I would also say there are a lot of folks here in this community that have a lot of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge. I see folks from representing multiple communities here. So if you have any knowledge in relationship to any of the questions that are being answered, I please would ask for you to hit up the person individually in the chat so that you can share information and you can continue the dialogue once this is all over. So yeah, thank you.
And We all know that Danny runs the formerly incarcerated student and alumni network, that listserv. Michael and I are both part of the listserv for formerly incarcerated system impacted community college students in California. So there's a lot of resources and a lot of help. Yeah. Can we go to the next question?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see many of you. I know a couple people here. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you so much, Michael. You know, for your palabras, your testimonials are powerful. And my question was like, what programs and services did you both use while in community college, in terms of like actual, you know, like institutional programs that existed, as well as like what limits did you find at those programs in terms of support, you know, for formerly incarcerated and system impacted peoples? If you could mind sharing.
Well,
Go ahead, Dan.
the programs, at least the programs that I participated in was, you know, Puente. That was like the first program that someone introduced me to, right? And that was like my hub, right? I was in the honor scholars program. Although I didn't finish it, I really appreciated that program because it actually gave me an understanding about what research is, right? And research wasn't just an idea that I had, that it was people looking at things through a microscope, that me collecting people's stories, right? And analyzing that and contextualizing that and putting it down in my own words was actually research, right? So that I really appreciated under scholars program, EOPS. Also, I got involved in some student clubs, right? Like Chicano, it was a Chicano Community Medicine, I think it's CCM. You know, and along with DSP, right? Disabled Student Program, right? And it took me a long time to really accept the fact that I needed to be in DSP, because I still had this mindset that, you know what, anybody that goes and asks for mental health services is because they're, you know, on the verge of breaking, you know, on the verge of breaking, right? And for me, I still carried a lot of that prison mentality with me. But lucky enough, you know, being surrounded by people that showed me, yo, like, nah, man, going to mental health services is not a fucking weakness, bro. It's a sign of strength. You know what I mean? And to ask for support is never should be a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength, knowing what you need support, you know? And those are some of the things that helped me. I don't know if Michael wants to add to that.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I was part of TRIO, the DRC, the EOPS, all those programs, the Pathway to Law program as well. And then they had another program for folks that are first generation students. All those programs, you know, typically would give out book vouchers, because for me, when I first paroled, I wasn't working. I had just gotten out. And so all those things were very helpful, especially with the books. Some books can be very expensive, but they also provide a lot of tutoring, counseling, a lot of different, you know, tools and resources that'll help you get through, make it a little bit easier. But it was definitely starting the formerly incarcerated student club and having other folks, like connecting with UCR's underground scholars, where I was at. That bridge, like Danny was talking about, was really important, because they also have, you know, a lot of resources. And above that, like for me, they had a lot more experience with school and education, because they already went through what I was just starting. So having those folks in that community and being able to have that mentorship by them was really important and really helpful for me.
And in terms of some of the limitations, right? Like, I think back now and I kind of see some of the limitations, but when I was there, I didn't think there was any limitation, right? Because I'm coming from a place where I didn't have nothing, right? I didn't have nothing, to no access to resources. And then now I'm on a campus and I see so many things. And for me, it was like, oh shit, it's endless. The resources and opportunities are endless, but you know, but some of those things have changed now, right? Like for instance, when I try to get a job, right? Like I was told no because of my 2 felony convictions. Although faculty stepped up to support me and I was able to get a job through work studies, now there's an actual policy through the chancellor's office that says on a hiring guidance of formerly incarcerated students and faculty and staff, right? So these are things that actually start, a lot of the limitations that existed then are now being addressed now, right?
I'm sorry, is it possible if I could also plug in something quickly?
You can go ahead and type it in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Because we only have 15 minutes left. I'm going to end the poll now so it's not in your face anymore. It's just really nice to know, you know, who's in the room with us. So it's beautiful to see so many people from outside PCC, so many of our students here, employees, formerly incarcerated, system impacted, allies, and everyone. So many people think that this presentation was fire as fuck. So grateful for you all. I had a private chat. You need to unmute yourself, homie.
I am mute. I am on mute. Hi. Good afternoon to Danny and Michael and to anybody else who comes from a similar background as I do. Hi, Britt. Hi, Jojo. Man, I heard so much great things. I think we touched on two things that I really am looking to relate to. One is incarceration, and how do we end up there? For those of us who grew up in the hood and gangbanging, you know, we're not from the hood. We are the hood. You know, we out there, we bang and we dedicate our life to that. And I think the mentality is and for those of us who can relate to, is this is what we live and die for. Literally, we're gonna go to prison. We sit there as kids, as teenagers, telling ourselves, this is my destiny. This is where I'm going. I'm going to go to prison. I'm going to go with the big homies. I'm going to die in the streets for this shit. I'm going to get killed, and I'm going to go kill some motherfucker for this shit. I think that's where it's hard to relate when I'm on this campus, is who could really relate for me to making that transition where we come from. For those of us who, and many of us could relate to, not just being in prison, but for many of us, we could relate to the childhood trauma that leads to this. When people talk about recidivism rates or prisons, schools now, prisons, or whatever it is, we have to focus it as a kid. We look at any 5-year-old, any 6-year-old, any 10-year-old. Those are just kids who at some way begin to develop this mind frame, this brainwashing to believe that everything they see is all they have. And that's the traumatizing part. We're talking about kids who go on to believe this is the life that I'm destined to live, that I'm destined to die in prison, that I'm destined to die in the streets. That's the traumatic part that we experience. And then as well as when you go to your prison, but still to make that transition outside of the environment to come back here is the most difficult thing for me. So oftentimes I can't relate because I'm still at the beginning of my own transition from not just being in prison, but being away from gangs and being who I am today. I still think oftentimes with violence, oftentimes with just these things. And it comes from my experiences. I've seen so many different comments when people talk, but yeah, Danny, mental health. I mean, just the trauma that leads us to believe this is what we have. It's deep rooted in us. And it's been difficult for me, but I guess for that, I wanted to ask the homies to speak on that, like the trauma that it's not really talked about, that led all of us who are in gangs and in prison or in the system, that led us there, really, right? So that's really was my question. If you guys don't mind speaking on that trauma, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Thank you for that, man. And nice to meet you, man, bro. And yeah, definitely trauma played a big role in my life in the way that I interacted with my community, right? And for me, you know, a lot of that started at home, right? By the age of 13, I was already an innocent bystander in 3 drive-by shootings. After the age of 13, they were actually shooting at me, or vice versa. And you know, and it's taken, you know, I feel where you're coming from, because like those thoughts, right? Those ruminating thoughts about like always reacting with violence, like that's, you know, it's sad to say that it's normal, right? But you know, you can't say that to your therapist because then they're gonna call the cops. But you know, it's for me, you know, it took me a long time to realize that, like, I need help, right? And then I'm not gonna just be able to do it by myself. And also this idea that like, well, as long as I'm not in the streets, I'm good. Like, because even if I'm not in the streets, these things are still in my head. They're still in my body, right? They're in my, yeah, I can feel it, you know? And so for me, you know, I've engaged in a lot of things that help me, right? Therapy, yoga, you know, I do temescalis, you know, were traditional indigenous sweat lodge, you know, to help me deal with a lot of this trauma that I've been exposed to, right? And it's not one thing that just, it doesn't happen just with one practice. It's something that you have to be consistent, yo, on a consistent basis, right? Because anything can trigger us, bro. And so for me, you know, self-care is a big part of my current lived experience, you know, because it is helping me stay balanced, right? And it is helping me to understand that a lot of my conditioning comes from the things that I was exposed to as a kid, man. I'm talking about like from kindergarten, right, all the way to, you know, even up to now, right? I still live in my hood, bro. I still live in my hood. I still identify with my homies. You know, they come by the house. You know, one of them was just here yesterday. You know, I still talk to people in my community, right? I'm not gonna be walking down the street and somebody calls me, "Hey, Danny, what's up?" Like, "Oh, I can't talk to you no more because I went to Berkeley." It's like, "Nah, bro. Like, what's up, man? How you doing? You know, we're here. You know, how can we work together? You know?" And my goal is, you know, now that I'm here, is trying to figure out ways to create different opportunities for people in my community.
I wanted to touch on something real quick. There's a homeboy who I know from Homeboys Industries. I don't see him on here. I'm very proud of him. My boy Jesse, you know, he didn't have all the experience that we did have. You know, he did grow up gangbanging in the streets. Fortunately for him, he was able to avoid going on the same path and having the same experiences. But, you know, I'm very proud of the homie who was able to cut that path and get to Berkeley. I'm so proud of him. So I think that's when I think about those things, like how can we avoid that, right? And, you know, that's the most awesome. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah.
Can I add to that real quick? Yeah, so for me, exactly what you talk about, it's still a daily. I struggle with that right now, bro. Like there's people that piss me off. I have such a short temper, right? And I think that's what led me to prison. And not only that, just experiencing the violence in prison, which is, you know, exasperated on so many levels, like, you know, watching people get stabbed to death or, you know, doing things of that nature, responding to things through violence, right? Even out here, like I was just having a conversation with Danny the other day about, you know, what was one of the hardest things about community college. I think for me, just coming out, you know, in prison, it's all about respect. People don't realize how much value respect is in prison. I mean, if it's something over just a petty, somebody takes your soup, a 20-cent soup, it's like their life could be literally took for that soup for 20 cents. It's a matter of, you know, we grow up in these machismo cultures that we feel like, you know, we have to be tough, right? And then sometimes we start to really believe that, and it really just sets in where we act that way, right? We act upon our aggressions. And I think, like I was telling Danny, for me, when I first got out, you know, I would see these young, you know, not that I'm better than anybody, but I would be like, these fools are just young punks trying to act hard. They don't even know, like, they don't know the real business. They're right here in community college trying to act like gangsters, homie. And one time I was walking and a fool bumped into me, right? And this wasn't even one of them wannabe gangsters. This was like a white dude, right? And he was like, "Hey, what's your problem, man?" And I was like, "What? Like, you're talking to me? Like, you bumped into me, right?" And then I just started getting like really hot and wanting to react. But then I thought to myself, man, you just got out, bro. You're here on college. How are you gonna, you know, go to jail for that, right? Like, this fool ain't even worth it. You know, he doesn't even know, like, a person would take his life in a minute, but he's just, you know, ignorant of that fact, right? So I'm gonna give him a pass and just keep moving on and just be like, you know, it's his lucky day, right?
Grow.
But that right there, like, you know, coming from a machismo background and then prison where everybody, you know, who's tatted up and want to be the hardest person walking the yard and all that, and to humble yourself to the level that you know, you bow down, like, okay, bro, this is your world, you know, the walkway is all yours, you know, like, fuck. But to do that, it takes a lot, bro. It's easy to just to pull out the strap and bust on this floor or cold cock that idiot and you be laughing at him, but you're the one that's gonna end up in handcuffs back in prison. And especially with our record and our reputation, we're gonna end up doing more time, and they'll probably definitely add a gang enhancement in some way, be able to find or say that, oh, this was for the benefit of the gang, even though it was just a mutual one-on-one, right? So those things, you know, I have to be cognizant about it all the time, that's what I'm facing. So I'm just gonna ignore stuff when people flip me off on the road, honking and all crazy kind of stuff, and I really feel like just getting out of the car and whooping their ass. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do this because, you know, and Alex too, he knows, he's seen me, you know, and thankfully, again, to community, thankfully to folks like Alex who have been on campus after we have this community to be able to like, hey, bro, nah, don't do it, dog. Just don't do it. This ain't worth it, right? So we need that voice of reason. That's why I think it's important to have mentorship and community and to know that, you know what, we don't have to deal with things that way because all it's going to end up happening is they're going to be able to continue to say, see, they're freaking animals. They're violent. They need to be locked up, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to find ways, again, like the big homie taught me, you know, the pen is mightier than the sword. So I'm going to always keep that mentality. I'm going to beat them strategically and mentally as opposed to with my fist, which I know we already know we can because we grew up slinging them, right? That's all I got to say. Sorry if I took too much time.
Thank you. Thank you for those powerful questions. I know we're scheduled to end at 1:30. I think we might have time for another question. And I'm going to let Danny and Michael choose because there's a lot of questions in the chat. And, you know, there's a lot that are very specific. Some people have left.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't necessarily a question. It was just that I was noticing all the male experiences of solitary confinement, and I see my sister right here, Daniela, who I know is also formerly incarcerated and did spend time in solitary confinement. And we also suffer severe degradation, dehumanization, having to shower, and the male guard can literally look in while you're showering, having to strip search, and they're in the cop shop and they're able to see, having to, you know, bleed to death and beg a male officer for feminine products. And I know that, you know, that we also share many struggles in isolation. We stare at that ceiling, we count those bricks, we feel the heat in the summer to where you feel like you're gonna die and your brain is gonna bake, and you feel so freezing cold in the winter, you think like you're never ever gonna feel warmth again. So I just wanted to speak on behalf of the women. And I would like my sister Daniela to say something too.
I don't know what to say except, I mean, yeah, I mean, I could piggyback off of solitary confinement and the experiences that women face. And one of the things, I mean, I guess that stands out that I think a lot of people don't think about that Dolores said is like having to like be in need of feminine products, and just kind of like when you're in solitary confinement, you kind of have to yell out the door or like to get what you need, and just you know, and they always think you're lying. So when it's like, when it comes to feminine products, you're like, I need more, and like guards will tell you, well, my wife doesn't use that many, why do you only need like 5, you know what I mean? So just always having to explain yourself and degrade yourself in that way. So so definitely, yeah, we're definitely experiencing that. And then a lot of women still right now in prison right now, they're after they shut down Valley State Prison for women and turned it into a men's prison, women were overcrowded in CCWF. Now we have less prisons, and so what's happening is that people getting in fights, or instead of being able to move from yard to yard, they're putting them in solitary confinement. So there's just a lot there. But
Cool.
Thank you. Shout out to our sisters and women of this community as well.
Yeah, I think we're short on time, but I can't, looking at what questions to bring up, right? If anybody just wants to ask a question or say something, feel free.
I'm a Puente counselor at Miracosta College. Danny, thank you for giving a little shout out to Puente. I have a question in regards to your family or significant other, children, nieces or nephews that may be in college, and there is a possible shame or a possible constant fear of sharing that they couldn't do an assignment because they had to travel to, you know, these many miles over the weekend to go visit a family member that's incarcerated. They don't want anyone to know, hiding it, not, you know, making sure that it's blocked on social media when they put a post of when to visit my brother, when to visit my mother. How can us as educators provide like, is there something specific we should say or do to provide an environment where it's okay to come and talk to us, you know, send us an email message, a Zoom message. My students reach me through Instagram and Facebook Messenger all the time for counseling sessions. What can we do to let them know it is okay to let us know that you are system impacted and we are willing to work with you if you're dealing with the situation where you're providing the support to your family member that is incarcerated. And if we need to modify your timelines or your assignments or whatever, we're gonna do it to support you, but don't be afraid to share that with us.
Well, I think one thing that comes to mind for me is now we're in a time and a place where people are talking about these issues, right? It's not something that's being hidden, right? Or although there's still a stigma to it, right? But you know, with being formerly incarcerated or being a family member, right? But I think recognizing that there are larger communities outside of your campus that are doing this type of work, right? And so if you as an educator, if you can find out what those communities are, and even if they're just Facebook groups or you know, even a email listserv, like making sure that folks understand that there's communities where there are people that you can relate to, right? That had the same experiences as you, whether on campus through a student club for formerly incarcerated system impact students or a student program, or just even community organizations, right? And I'm not sure where you're at, but so I can't really tell like off the top of my head what organizations exist in that area. But you know, there's folks doing work all up and down the state around supporting even system impacted, you know, family members. I don't know if you, Michael, want to add to that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's very difficult, especially like at the beginning, you know, telling our story, you know, self-identifying as being formerly incarcerated. But when I did, it was very funny because the first time I did, I remember it was at Riverside City College, and there was we had a panel on formerly incarcerated students. And afterwards, a lot of the students, a lot of the faculty even came up to me after and were like, you know, I have a loved one inside, my brother or my sister is inside. And just really, really surprising. And then I even read some research that said that I think 80%, don't quote me on this, but it's a very high percentage of Black and brown folks have a loved one either incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. So it's not uncommon as most people think, but it is a stigma, you know, that, oh, you must be bad, you know, because your family member is locked up. It would, you know, create a stigma for you as well. But I think as faculty and staff and education, you know, could also start to talk to each other and have conversations about that so that it isn't any longer a stigma, that it's accepted and part of, you know, the marginalized, oppressed populations that are given resources for, like disabilities, etc. Because it is a disability, and mass incarceration does attack people of color. And so it's not based on the person's, you know, oh, it's because they're a bad person. It's because it was set up that way, kind of like what the homie was saying earlier. We're destined, you know, like Michelle Alexander said in her new Jim Crow book, that, you know, we're destined on this pathway to stigmatism and being a part of the caste system. So we shouldn't feel ashamed of it, but try to support each other to end it. And I think you guys can help with that fight as well by educating other staff and other people that work at the colleges so that our loved ones and those that are system impacted don't have to feel afraid to talk about it or embarrassed.
Thank you both very much. Gregory actually contacted me while you were talking and he volunteered to help.
One thing that I learned through, you know, very early on, right? especially once I started figuring out, like, we are an incarceration nation, right? That depends on the on disposing of, in particular, Black and brown bodies, right? Indigenous bodies, right? When I would tell people that I'm formerly incarcerated and it made them feel uncomfortable, I would remind them, like, I'm not the one with the problem, right? Like, if me being formerly incarcerated makes you uncomfortable, then you don't have a grasp of reality, because we live in a country that locks up over 2.7 million people, has over 7 million people on parole, probation, or some type of community supervision. So if you don't understand that, then you must be living in a bubble, and that's what's making you uncomfortable, that I'm breaking you out of that bubble. And I think that kind of helped a lot, for some folks, like, and they'll come back like, Danny, I was reading these articles, or, like, oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Like, well, of course, because you're living in the comfort of your life.
Again, I'm so grateful. We are so grateful to share space with you. Looks like Michael might have jumped off the meeting. It's 1:35. We're over time. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you for everyone for sharing space. And if there's anything that you've heard from this conversation, I want to remind you, our speaker series is ongoing. And after every workshop, feel free to reach out to us on social media, by text, or whatever information you have to get in contact with us. Our advocates are here to support you through any emotions or feelings that come up, and resources that you might need. Doesn't matter if you're a core scholar, a PCC student, or anywhere you're from, we're here for you, so please reach out. And Danny, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, for folks that are formerly incarcerated and want to learn more about the formerly incarcerated student alumni listserv and the Facebook group that I run, I have my emails at the bottom. I just posted my email. Feel free to send me an email, and I can add you to the listserv. And it's just a listserv where I'm always sharing resources, opportunities, scholarships, fellowships, job employment opportunities that are directed specifically for formerly incarcerated people. So anything there that I post on the Facebook group or on the listserv are resources specifically for formerly incarcerated people. So, like, you don't have to tell me, hey, Danny, can I apply because I'm formerly incarcerated? Like, no, it's for you. Yeah. So that's, thank you, everybody, though. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time. And there's a lot of folks here that jumped on this call, man. And I was kind of nervous, but, we got through it, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
So Danny's email is in the chat. I also posted mine there if you want to reach out, or if you are formerly incarcerated or system impacted community college student in California, I also run a listserv for that group. And Michael, if you want to talk about what you had organized today to say goodbye to us, and where you were with us instead of being at this event that you organized, that would kind of be an amazing closing.
Yeah, for sure. So as folks know, with this pandemic, COVID-19, we are at risk ourselves. But as you can imagine, just as we spoke about some of the conditions inside our loved ones are going through, and folks in the community are in such horrid conditions right now inside the county jail during this pandemic. And so thank you. But yeah, so today was a rally. Everybody met at Homeboy Industries to go caravanning around Jackie Lacey, the DA's office, in order to put pressure on her to release more people and stop prosecuting and charging people coming in with very low-level crimes and being, subject to literally a death sentence with the COVID and people dying inside. We have a super huge number of people who have been tested positive, who have already died. And so if you guys can follow us with Justice LA and the work that we're doing to end mass incarceration here in LA County and provide an alternatives to incarceration, it would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, shout out to all the people out there rallying right now.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll let you go. We've taken enough of your time, and you deserve to decompress after sharing so much knowledge, and also, maybe digging up stuff that you haven't had to touch for a while. So thank you.